Let me see here. Make sure we're going live. I think we are. All right, welcome everybody to the Dad's Doomsday Guide. I'm just going to try to get the TikTok feature going. All right. All right, everything's going. Welcome everybody to the show. We're here today to talk about the Nathaniel Gillis episode that we had on last week. And he was mentioning that his theory is that all paranormal, the phenomenon, is originating from one source. And that source does not have our best interest in mind, but at the same time, we can't really trust anything that we see, that we hear, our experiences, past loved ones. So there was a lot to unpack in that episode. And so we wanted to jump on and talk about it, see if you guys had any questions, and address some of the comments that we had on the YouTube videos that we've been posting in the teasers. So there's a few different claims here. And one of the first ones that I think was interesting was the use of sigils and those appearing on the skin, under the skin, and being something that was confirmed through photos. Personally, I would love to see those photos, but this is interesting because we had um, past guest Dr. Kelly, and he was a parapsychologist, and I can't remember exactly what he was talking about. Sorry, guys, if you talking gets kind of hard. I have terrible vision. um, but he was mentioning that through some automatic writing, I think it was that a woman was doing, is that some of that was appearing under her skin. And so you had this phenomenon where what they were thinking or what they were experiencing was then kind of manifesting on the skin. So this is a little different than, say, a traditional demonic entity attacking somebody and leaving prints or marks on the skin, because that's terrifying in and of itself. Um, but the problem with this is that I just don't think one, I need to, like I said, I need to see the evidence. I can't, it's really hard with anything paranormal um to trust it based on an anecdote or someone mentioning like, oh hey, I experienced this, so therefore um I'm sorry, hold on, open up the chat window. It's hard to everything, a lot of stuff is on faith, and so you have to kind of to trace it back to the original source material and find that person who had that mark. I think would obviously go a long way in convincing me. um and then also with Dr. Kelly, like there's no reason to doubt this stuff is occurring on people, but I just don't know the cause. Because even with what Nathaniel was saying was that you can't be sure that even what we're perceiving is truth. All right, and that kind of gets into the second thing is that whatever these entities are that are interacting with human beings across the spectrum, right? UAP is kind of the most recent example of people experiencing things and having strange paranormal events, and it crosses with Skinwalker Ranch, and this is what we kind of talked about, is that people are seeing kind of some bizarre stuff. Like some people are seeing like wolfmen coming out of the woods and stuff, and he uses that as an example. This werewolf looking thing chased down a group of people, got over somebody, got really close to his face, and then he evaporated. It just disappeared. And so Nathaniel's thesis is that this thing is using what our thoughts, our emotions, our past to interact with us. And that's a little bit scary because that coincides with what a lot of the exorcists who've come on and talked about. They reference they reference demons. This was Father John actually references demons can look at you. You're maybe like you're interacting with somebody and say you find them attractive, and so your pupils dilate and you have all this kind of stuff occurring, physical changes, physiological changes, and it can pick up on those signals and then respond to you. That's very similar to what Nathaniel's saying, and that it'll monitor what you're doing, what you're thinking, your experiences, and then present something to you that you're going to accept or that you'll be afraid of. And he uses the example of the woman who had a cartoon character appear to her, and that was very strange, and you would think that, "Oh, I would just laugh at that," or you think you're going crazy, right? You check yourself into the hospital and get your brain scanned because 'cause you're like, "What why am I seeing a childhood cartoon?" But so it's using that to present itself to you in something that you'll accept or interact with. And so in doing that though, you can't trust that what it's showing you is its actual form. And he got into people who are investigating this and they're going through like of these layers of I guess probing, you would say. I don't know if they're going into like this other realm. They're meditating, they're using psychedelics, they're using different methods to access these archetypes, as what he calls them. And then they're telling it, no, I don't want to speak to, say you saw a guide or something. Like, no, I don't want to speak to that. I want to speak to the thing past that. So they move that aside and then they'll interact with the next being. And maybe it's an extraterrestrial or an alien. And you go, no, I don't want to talk to that. I want to move to the next thing. And you go beyond that. And so once you get past all the archetypes, he said they collapse all into one. And basically his thing is that it's just like a program. So this intelligence is running to interact with you, but you don't even know what you're looking at. You don't know what's true, what's not. And so he said that he got to the point where he doesn't trust anything he sees. And he had a lot of interactions with his deceased grandma. He had things happening. He was involved in a haunting. And by the way, if you haven't watched this episode yet, like if you're on TikTok or wherever you are and you haven't seen the whole Nathaniel interview, like highly recommend checking that out because he goes into all these details and all the nuance. Um, this presents a really dark, a really dark um, perception of reality because like if you can't believe anything, like we all think if there's good, if there's evil, we everybody grapples with, what the true nature of reality is there an afterlife, is there even a god, is this all just kind of an accident? So in that, if you take the thought that maybe there is something, there is consciousness, there's something involved, and this that we're not perceiving in our day-to-day life, and through death, through psychedelics, you come into contact with that kind of stuff. Then that becomes it can be either comforting, like if you're seeing like, hey, I saw like in my example, my mom had some experiences with my dad after he passed away, and it was just something that he would always get her. And I've said this before, he would always get her balloons like on their wedding anniversaries or birthdays, and so there was a couple balloons left over, like the real big ones, like the ones that you see, like I misidentified as like a UAP or something because they'll reflect light, kind of weird. I should kill that. Sorry if that's a bad sound. Um, and so when he passed away, the balloons were still there. And so they happened to come from one side of the house that was really far away. They ended up, and they've never done this over the, years and years we've lived there, like 30, 40 years. The balloons that proceeded to move out of this one room across the way, came in, went into their down a hallway into their bedroom and went over his dresser and hovered over that and moved around. It was crazy. It was very bizarre, right? You could say, "Oh, the wind or the AC or whatever." You could make an example out of that and say, "Hey, this wasn't what you think it is," and that's fine. But there's strange things that happen like that. But Nathaniel was saying, like, even with that, you can't trust that that's really the deceased loved one. Is that it could be whatever these whatever these entities are that are living in this other realm, or that are using that to hijack our consciousness, our souls, and everything else, is that it's using that to get you to engage with it, right? Because automatically, my mom is more receptive to that. She's like, "Oh, this thing's interacting with me. It's just like, what he used to do, or that it's hovering over the things that he used to like or enjoy." And so it pulls you into an interaction. And no matter what you believe across religions, across spiritual practices, like there's strange common threads that kind of intermix together and cross over. And so that's exactly what I'm talking about with The Exorcist and everything else, is that that was exactly what he was describing. Like it will bait you into an interaction with it, and then it'll start going down deeper into the rabbit hole of wrapping you around its finger and then getting negative reactions. Um, So you have to be really careful if you interact with this stuff. That was his point. And that kind of bummed me out because, you would like to think some of these things mean something. And he even said, like, you don't necessarily know if it does or it doesn't. Um, you just have to be careful. And he felt that you couldn't put so much weight on experience. And that's kind of like when he got into like the CE5 stuff where people are using meditation and trying to engage the phenomenon and get it to appear and interact with it. And I just don't. I've never done that. I don't know if I would ever do that. To me, it sounds kind of frightening because I don't want to open the door to this stuff necessarily. But at the same time, you kind of want to see what's out there, and that's why I've kind of toyed with the idea of like these certain things to see like, oh, what's next? Because you really want answers when you get to a certain point in life, or you lose people in your life, and you're like, hey, I wonder what's after. But the CE5 stuff, he was very critical of that, and he said, people think it's all love and light, which was the term he used. But he said you can't base it off one experience because it'll bait you into interacting with it off a good experience, and then after that, it'll kind of like go down um, into subsequent negative ones. And I haven't done any kind of research, and I don't know if he has been able to. I don't know when you do a podcast interview like that, it's 2 hours of talking, and the guest is giving us their opinion based off research and things that they've done. And I think it's very difficult. You can't like fact check them in real time, so you have to do to be something you do after, and you have to go back into these sources and find all this stuff. Um, but one, I'd want to see the CE5 people um, summon this stuff and actually get the desired results, because I don't even know if I believe in that. I don't know if anybody's out there has ever done that who's listening to this. Um, but I don't think I think when you start to put yourself out there, and even Diana Pasolka, I don't know if you guys know who she is, but she's been on Rogan and various podcasts. She teaches religion, I think some other things at North Carolina, I think it is. And she has said she had done some kind of had a psychedelic experience when she was younger, and she felt that she was lucky. I think this was on the Sean Ryan podcast. She was lucky that she got out kind of unscathed, like that nothing interacted with her in a negative way. And so she doesn't want to do it now, present day, because she's worried about what's going to interact with her. And that from the people they know in the government and researching this stuff, is that they felt it was demonic. And that kind of falls into one of Nathaniel's main points, was that he didn't um he didn't like the term demonic in the sense of how we're using it today. And a lot of times they'll say horns and hooves. Um and he feels that's wrong. He feel like it's been hijacked over the years by this I think he called it a proto-intelligence, this thing that's kind of like interacting with us. Um and that even that, while he thinks the tone of it, the goals of it are, I guess, quote unquote demonic, meaning that it doesn't have our best interest in mind, is that it's not the perception of this horned beast that we see. Like we don't know what it looks like. You don't know what it is. You don't know what shape. And I think I asked him, I think, well, what's its true form? Because I'm really curious. You have all these biblical references and all these other things where people talk about angels, demons, and like even angels in the Bible, like they talk about how it actually really appears. And I think one of the oh god, who was it? Was it Saint one of the saints? I can't remember her name. It was a woman, and she had an angel appear to her, and she describes it and how it was just kind of terrifying looking. And so I don't think anybody actually knows what it looks like um in any form. So some people are getting the alien, some people are getting their deceased loved one, some people are getting a traditional looking demon. And so that was kind of I guess upsetting to my worldview, because like uh you don't know what's really going on. And that's not good. Because then how are you gonna, how do you navigate life? I mean, if it's really stacked up that way, if you really have if you really have no way of knowing what's real, of what's interacting with you, I feel like it's just that's one of the comments in on the YouTube video was basically, this isn't what the Bible says. And I mean, I understand that, because I grew up Catholic. I still consider myself a practicing Catholic. And it's just kind of it is. I want to know the truth. Like I don't. When I originally had it happen, like it was, I think somebody passed away when I was like in my 20s, and then I had some health issues, and I started questioning, like, you should question everything. Why is there suffering? Why is there pain? Um, And then when my dad passed away, that was even just compounded further, because I thought it was very unfair kind of what happened to him. And so you start to lose, I guess I lost faith in the story of the Bible, right? And I know people will come on and say, "Oh, there's suffering and you can't do anything about it." Um, and it's just part of, carrying the cross with Christ and everything else. And I'm not going to pretend like I'm very like really fluent with that, and I can repeat scripture and all that stuff. I've never obviously been that way, and I think Catholics in general are less like that. But it does rock your world if someone goes and says like, "Hey, this isn't what." Because even then, you could question the Bible itself and be like, "Oh, this was planted in a way by this intelligence, like whatever it is." And then you can go down the slippery slope to be, I don't know, become nihilistic in a way and think nothing has a point and it's all stacked against you and these things are coming down and preying on you like parasites. And its idea was that possession to these entities is like pregnancy to us. And that's how they basically keep living, is they're using us. And he said they're like part of these entities were formerly human. They're occult practitioners. They tap into this proto-intelligence, this higher level of intelligence and consciousness, and then they can come back down and mess with us and become like physical flesh. And there's a ton of symbolism if you want to like break down it in that way through religious texts like the Bible and everything else. But I understand the original commenters feeling like this isn't what the Bible teaches. So I mean, we don't do these episodes to like attack religion and faith. Like I still lean, Catholic and the Bible, and it's very important to me and all the symbolism and everything else in there and the stories and the lessons. And I have a new appreciation for it when you actually talk or listen to people who are experts in ancient texts and where it came from and how it was formed. Like it's fascinating. It's really fascinating stuff. But at the same time, I don't want to believe it just to believe it. You know, like I don't want to follow religion just because it makes me feel good or it gives me comfort. And I know a lot of people I think seek that during times of pain or sadness. They seek comfort, and to be reinforced with what they believe. Um, I was gonna read a comment. Let me see. They seem to change the way they look through the ages to elicit a reaction. Exactly. Exactly, and that's his point. I mean, because you can go back through time, through text. And I just got finished speaking to somebody, his name was Gregor. He's like an expert in ancient texts, and he kind of he's going through all these different ancient civilizations who had very little, if any, contact at all. And he's looking at NDE reports, so near death experiences where people died, went and saw beings after, or went to another realm, and then came back and told their reports. And so that was a fascinating conversation in and of itself. But you just go through those texts and you see it present itself in different ways. You can have moments in history where there's very a lot of demonic imagery, the horns and hooves stuff, and that was Nathaniel's point, is that it used that to promote that particular image. And there was a lot, and you could argue like, oh well, did it react to what the people were thinking at the time, or is that their true image? And it's just that's how we started recording stuff down. But I mean, I think the case for that argument is that it's changing over time to elicit our reactions is the UAP stuff, the UFOs. And so people want to look at that as an example of it's just using the most recent fascination that we have as a culture to tap into what we want to see. Sorry guys, I'm just gonna click this real quick. That is small. I'm working on streaming to like just one screen. I gotta set it up because we've never done like streaming in any significant way. So we're gonna start to do that more often, obviously. But so that's kind of where that's it for me. Like I just don't know how if you end up in that situation where he is, or that view, that you can't really trust what we see or what we experience, then I don't know. Um, then I don't know how you trust anything, how you investigate anything. And I think he's trying to figure that out. They're trying to go through experiences and set up tests, but it's like how you set up a test. And I think that's what one of the comments was, just like a laughing emoji on one of the teasers that we posted, and it was like, kind of like trashing uh the whole concept, um and I think that's easy to do. You can just make fun of this and go, oh man, it's a bunch of crazy people having these experiences. But are you really going to say that over the history of the world, civilization, and the history of mankind, that every single thing that people experienced and wrote about and talked about was either a hallucination, they're crazy, or they were just so unsophisticated that they just assumed it was like a god or a goddess or an alien being, right? I mean, I think the odds are stacked the other way. That not one is true, not one is real. Like we understand everything about reality in the universe. I mean, that seems absolutely silly to me. If you're going to make that claim, it could be true, it could be true. But I think the idea that we understand everything we can about like quantum physics and the quantum realm, and even that when they talk about entanglement, like I'm not a scientist, but you can start going down and reading about that stuff and getting it explained to you in a way that you can understand. And even that shows that there could be something involved, consciousness on that level where we just can't measure it yet. So if somebody's looking for proof with this stuff, they'll come in and see a story about the wolfman or these or tall gray men. I think I posted that as a teaser who came into a church when someone died who had been researching this stuff. And the insinuation was that the phenomenon, because it was getting this researcher was getting too close to the truth, that they kind of like took him out. Um, and then these gray men showed up, interacted with people at the funeral, and then vanished. And then when they went back to their cameras and videos, the family, and they couldn't find him. Right. So that was the story. And there's tons of stories like that of weird interactions with entities and beings. But then someone comes on and laughs at it. And it's like, well, maybe, I'm not saying I believe everything either. As those exorcists who come on and parapsychologists come on and talk to us, they say the vast majority are maybe people with mental illness or problems. So I don't believe everything, but I don't dismiss everything either. And I think that's a big mistake when you can't, just because something's anecdotal or a story, or you can't measure it. Because how are you going to measure something you don't even know how it came to be? Like consciousness. Scientists can't even explain that yet. Maybe they will one day. But if you're going to wait around for like them to explain it through some kind of peer reviewed publication, like you're going to be waiting, you're going to be dead. You're not going to be alive. So I think that's a big mistake. It's like you can't, I mean, you can. People do it all the time. But if you're going to do a drive-by laugh and just say, "Oh, this is ridiculous," I mean, that's fine. I mean, you're entitled to do that. But with everyone we're speaking to, there's strange crossover that something is going on. What that is, I don't know. And even Nathaniel was just like, "What this is, truly, as I don't know." Um, but they're trying to figure it out. And I have respect for the people who try to figure this stuff out. I don't, if someone just wants to like, walk around and just criticize, like most of this stuff, that doesn't, I don't think that adds anything to the conversation. If you just want to laugh at something and say someone's crazy, or like, oh yeah, right, you saw this or that. It's like, I mean, I know people say seeing is believing. I think Nathaniel's point is it's kind of not, you know. So I can't even say that. Like I would love to see this stuff. Like you would want to run tests, right? You want to see if there's something on the skin, if there's a handprint coming from inside out. Like you want to see what that is, because that seems very uh crazy to me that would be something that could even happen. But even if it is happening, like who's to say it's paranormal, or who's to say there's some kind of force acting upon that person? Um, But I wanna see proof, right? And then it talks about, this is a good example. It's Christopher, or not Christopher Nolan, the filmmaker. Gary Nolan, I think it is the Stanford researcher who is very, involved in UAP and checking out brain scams for the government, because people were getting interactions with these UAPs, and then they'd have, scarring on their brain and damage on their brain. And that's obviously a physical thing you can test and look at, and they said it was similar to, like, people who've had interaction, I think, with, Havana syndrome. And so, if you look at that, he was finding that that was correlated to, I don't know if they thought it was radiation exposure or some kind of energy that they put out. And so those are the kind of tests, and I think that, people on in that realm who will get a little bit more serious about and have the capability to do that can start talking about that. And he had another term. I actually had to save it. What is it called? It's the, I'm going to say this really wrong. Kadat Pudamin. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly. But there's a connectivity in the brain to where they're finding that there's extra, I think, neurons. I'd have to sit there to read it too. I get it accurate. There's overconnection between this area of the brain that has intuition, intelligence. It's like the hub for that. Um, Forming a brain within a brain. This correlates with heightened perception, anomalous cognition, and higher intuition. And so Nolan, I guess, found this and these, brain scans. And originally they thought it was damage, but it turned out not to be. It might be hereditary and it's passed down from generation to generation. And this is why some people might be seeing, the UAPs. Um, and that's amazing because you're measuring that with physical tools that science will accept and understand in terms of like this area of the brain that's behaving differently. And like they do that with like what lights up in brain scans when they have like psychedelic experiences or other things like that. Um, so I think that's a huge step in terms of understanding like maybe what's happening here. And his in Nolan's point wasn't that it wasn't that that's making people hallucinate these experiences, but he thought it was making them more perceptive to having them in the first place or to noticing things that aren't there. Because like you can go down, it's kind of like on the edge of understanding of science right now, but they're saying that our perceptions are geared to survive. We're here to hunt, reproduce, avoid, threats, right? The classic saber-toothed tiger as you're in the cave, like you don't want to get eaten, right? You're going to avoid the dark if you can't see, if you don't have fire. So we're geared and evolved for that in mind. We're not set up to actually view reality as it actually is, whatever that is. And I think they look at obviously like this was kind of blew my mind. They were looking at I was reading about matter, and this is like not necessarily it's like I'm burning up in here, guys. This is like hot in here. I don't want to turn the fan on though because it's gonna make some racket over the phone. Um, start sweating bullets. All right, I'm gonna turn on. If it's too loud, somebody say something on the TikTok stream because it's crazy. Um, what was I saying? Shoot, I lost my train of thought. Somebody, oh, hold on. So, comment passport to Megan. Yeah, I think I did. Yeah, I did. I think I've read that. This book by Jacques Vallée really enlightened me. His take lines up with Nathaniel's view and mine as well. I encourage anyone interested in the phenomenon to check it out. It's called Passport to Magonia. I think that's it. Yeah, I actually bought his book. Um, I bought his book. Which one is it? I think it's Something in the Sky. Which one? It's like a big collection of different reports throughout history, and the reports go uh covering in ancient times what people would see and how that correlated to today and kind of blending those two together. It was really fascinating. So I'll have to look at that one. I don't know if I've actually seen that in particular. I don't know if I've seen that one or read that one rather. Um, so I'm just reading, guys. Another comment. Um, because Nathaniel talked about incubi and succubi, and that's if anybody doesn't know, that's when you have a demon who has a relationship. I don't know. Does TikTok care if I say any of this stuff? Um, a like a sexual relationship with with a human being. So these things will crawl into bed, and there's a story where this woman it was grooming his wife, he said. This was the story. And this thing crawled into bed, twirled a woman's hair, and the husband could feel it. And so they reached out to Nathaniel, like, hey, what do we do? And so that's part of his theory is that these once human beings use these proto-intelligence, this higher level of consciousness, if you will, or however you want to term it, kind of hack into that through occult rituals and then try to come down and then have children or possess women. And it's pretty dark and creepy. But that was one of the claims. And so this person was saying, like, isn't this a sleep paralysis kind of dressed up as like a more complicated way? And obviously it could be. Like I know people who have sleep paralysis. They wake up, they can't move, they feel like something's in the room or sitting on their chest, and that's obviously really scary. And you could start having these experiences that you may think are real, even though you're still either asleep or not fully awake. And I think the medical explanation for that is that your part of your brain is waking up and like the nervous system or whatever isn't actually quite awake yet. And so that's like the prosaic explanation. Um yeah, what you described sounds like it. Yeah, I think yeah. Um so if it is sleep paralysis, I think that explains probably a portion of them. But I think there's a difference if, and again, you'd have to talk to the person who actually experienced it. Like you're not gonna if you're wide awake, you know you're wide awake. Like I know when I'm awake in the middle of the night. So right, if I'm wide awake and this thing's crawling in the bed and they said they saw the impressions of this thing that they obviously couldn't see the entity with their eyes, but they could see the effect that it was having on the world around them, which was the bed, and it was imprinting marks as it moved into the bed, and that's obviously super super creepy, and I think you would know if it was sleep paralysis. I mean, that's just my opinion, but again, right, you're trusting somebody else's account of the events, and so I don't know, for some people that's just not good enough. But I don't know what kind of test you could ever do in a lab or a publication where you could go, okay, whatever succubi is out there, I'm gonna put this person in the bed and we're gonna film and you got to come interact with them. um I don't know, there is the case, right, and I know Neil deGrasse Tyson always says this, is like you have so many cell phones that capture so many things, but you never quite get video of these events. And so, I've heard the demonologist we had on. Well, actually, no, Ralph Sarchi, demonologist. He said he did film exorcisms, and some of that behavior. And then another demonologist, Dr. Richard Gallagher, who's was pretty high profile in terms of who he was working with in that realm, and evaluating people to see whether they had mental illness or not. I think that's his thing, was that he didn't think that if you filmed it, things would show up anyway. So you have two kind of different accounts there. Ralph was saying that he has filmed stuff, and then Dr. Gallagher, who said he didn't. Um, I don't know. I think when you're really scared about something, if Nathaniel's right and it can manage your perceptions and mess with you, like you're not, it can make you not pick up a phone. It could not put that. I mean, that's where it becomes, if it's not falsifiable and you can just say, oh, it could control everything, therefore we have nothing. Like, I don't think that's helpful. So I would walk that back, and I wouldn't say there's no way you can ever know, because then what's the point, right? I mean, it's kind of a similar argument, right? We're all conscious beings, we're kind of trapped in that setting of how we view the world. So how would you ever really know, and how would you ever really be able to test anything objectively when we're viewing it from that lens anyway? So it's kind of similar. It doesn't sound like there's no hope or anything, but um what's up, Blue Alien? These entities are also here to hunt, feed, reproduce, and learn. Like Nathaniel said, to rewrite and perfect the program. My great grandmother always said to never trust your eyes. Yeah. I mean, to be honest with you, through everything that everybody we've talked to, like I feel like that's true. I feel like you can't, I don't think I would trust, I don't think I would trust anything I saw. And it kind of, I mean, like I said, it kind of stinks because like I had this, it was like a really personal thing, because my dad passed away in 2020, and then I didn't really have any like sign. I didn't have any signs from him. I didn't have anything weird happen. There was a couple things that I thought were kind of strange, but I was falling asleep the other night, and I closed my eyes, and I just had an image of him. I couldn't see his face. It was like a silhouette, and I felt really calm, really at peace. And I remember him putting his hand out to me, and I took his hand, and I said, "It's nice to see you again." And then I remember, like, because I was dozing off, sometimes when you doze off and like you'll want to move out of that, I moved. And so it broke me out of that dream I was having. And I just remember thinking to myself, oh, that was nice. And I fell asleep. And it really kind of hit me harder the next day because I hadn't had anything. And like that easily just could be me, right? Wishful thinking, subconscious memories of him. And I just wanted to see him and talk to him. And so I had that moment. Um, but I don't want to think. And then the other part of me is like, well, maybe that was really him, if you believe in that. Trust me, I've struggled with this a lot. Like, what's real? Is there anything after? Like, I'm not just sitting here as like some like believer, like no matter what. Like, I know I don't. And that's what's frustrating. And that's what we talk to so many people on the podcast about, all these different fields and all these different areas. Like, what's real? What's coming after, if anything? Um, but that would suck to learn I can't trust that, because it might be this thing just trying to lure me into something. And I don't want to go there. So to me, I like the advice of past exorcists who've been on the show, is that how do you feel when it's there with you? Like whatever interaction you're having with this, quote unquote paranormal or something you can't explain, do you feel threatened? Is there like a hard edge to it? What Father John described it as, or do you feel comfortable and at peace? And I like to think that if I feel comfortable and at peace, then I'm going to entertain that possibility a little longer. It doesn't mean I'm not like, if something kept happening, like I have friends, like we just talked to another guy who's had paranormal stuff going on in his house. And it's like, there's another person we might talk to about it. And these aren't people with any kind of issues. Like there's stuff really happening. Like, what is that? Like, you can't just say, oh, you're imagining it or you're making it up for attention. These guys aren't, they're not 100% not. One of them in particular that my brother knows and we're trying to talk to, we might have him on, is his kid saw it, something coming through the wall apparently or something. I have to get the specifics. They've had multiple people come to the house, a priest to bless it. I think they've had different other practitioners to try to like get rid of whatever this is. And so I don't know. I think it's so, that's the thing, is it's so confusing. There's such a mixed bag of all this stuff through across the UAP spectrum, paranormal spectrum, hauntings, high strangeness, I guess for the general term for everything, is that the Nathaniel's theory makes sense in that regard. Like there's something that's presenting things to you that, like, even Bruce Fenton, who we had on, who was talking about how his theory behind UFOs and alien visitation and all that. Even what was the other gentleman I had on? Another it was another alien topic. I'm testing my ability to recall names. I'm terrible at names. Um, but he was talking about how these entities, these aliens, these extraterrestrials have the ability to like freeze time. They come in and abduct people and they just stop the time around you. And other people have said this too. It's like, if this is true and they can stop time, abduct you at will, uh, do all these things to you and you can't do anything about it, like that's terrifying. And why wouldn't you want to gravitate to some kind of more structured religion that gave you the good, the bad, what you can do, what you can pray, right? Because the other one's like the Wild West of like, oh, who's going to stop this from happening? Nobody. You're on your own, really. There's no government that's going to save you. And that's like the whole conspiracy. Oh, the government doesn't want people to know this because everybody's going to freak out and and society's going to crumble. Because I mean, it kind of would, right? I mean, I'd be a little concerned. Oh, hold on. One thing Nathaniel did say, this was crazy. If you guys have any other questions, let me know in the chat before we stop or anything. Is that really concerning was holy water. Like always, people always say like if something's going to possess you or hurt you, holy water, religious symbols, like right. That's like the works really well in movies and stories, and even well, Catholic priests would say it's a little difficult to do like the whole exorcism thing. But he tells the story of the holy water, him putting it down what they thought was a demonic haunting, and they put the holy water in the middle of the room, and it literally just drained by this thing that they couldn't see, and then knocked it over. And now this was from an account from a priest again, right? You have to go back to the source if you really want to know and see what it's about. Um, and so it shows you that nothing will work unless this thing wants you to think it'll work, right? And then again, like you're back to, he said iron. He mentioned iron was something that worked, and he didn't know why. And then below ground, I guess it stops working, but above it'll keep working. Like, I mean, I don't know. I mean, that's just like I said, you get into the wild west of it all, and it's not comforting. It's just not. I mean, I like to think that there's some stuff that's okay, right? There is good. I mean, I mean, if all that's true, and there is like a paranormal world, there's a consciousness above that. And I think the argument is, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, is that I don't think he believes that it's all evil. I think that there's like this maybe a God figure above all that, right? What you would describe as God, and whether you want to give it those attributes that traditional religions do, or you want to say it's something like more of a consciousness. Maybe that's that created all this simulation. Like he even thought it felt like we were in a simulation or some kind of habitat or something. Like that's kind of crazy. Sorry, just looking at that. And if that's true, you want to hope that it wasn't designed to be evil. It wasn't designed to like they're growing us for some kind of purpose to use us. Um, Nathaniel mentioned something about preying on fear, like it gets you afraid. And one of his first stories when he was haunted, um, was that this thing he felt wanted to get him to be afraid. And once he was able to like accept that he was scared, but not let it kind of eat him alive inside, that this thing ended up stopping. Um, I don't think it's all malevolent. Sorry. I don't think it's all malevolent. I haven't heard Nathaniel talk about the good counterparts, but I think they're also real due to things in the universe needing to be balanced. Yeah, I know. I hope that too. Like I do. And yeah, it would make sense, right? Because I mean, unless there was some design or purpose behind that to make us this way, but like the good, there seems to be a yin and a yang to everything, and it's like for the universe to be balanced. Um, so yeah, I would hope that that's not the case. Um, but I mean, that's the sense I got from his interview too, was that it's kind of dark, and there wasn't. I don't know. I think it'd have to be a follow up because when I'm sitting there talking for the first time and I'm kind of trying to digest what they believe, is that I don't um I don't necessarily can kind of weave them all together until after, and I kind of sit with it for a little bit. And once I did that, then yeah, you have extra questions where you're like, man, like, is there anything good out there? You kind of want that answered. Let's see if there's any other questions I wanted to address. Is one intelligence compatible with traditional religion? I mean, yeah, I don't know if in the context of how he was describing it, you know, like that felt a little bit that felt a little bit darker, and I don't know. I don't know. It depends, I guess, on your definition of on what you believe traditional religion to say. I mean, if you're talking about an omnipotent, omniscient creator, uh, I don't know. Like that didn't feel. It doesn't feel like that. It feels more like there's this thing that created reality, a prime mover maybe, and there's a level there that you can access with consciousness that you can go into and operate. And this is what people are experiencing when they have near death experiences or they have psychedelic experiences, and they go into this other realm. They see other entities, and then these other things, other creations, or other entities that have perverted creation in some way. I mean, it sounds a lot like we're talking about the Bible, have learned to, I guess, hijack that ability to then prey on human beings and or the biological forms in this reality. I mean, that's what kind of sounds like. So I mean, I think depending on your frame of reference and where you're coming at it from, I think you can easily draw similarities between that and major religions. I think you can. Um, it's very hard to be purely objective, and act like you didn't have any upbringing or what you were exposed to or kind of what religion or what you kind of hope to be true. To really sit back and look at it with an objective lens and think, okay, what is reality here? I think that's hard. That's very difficult to do, especially in this paranormal realm where I think a lot of people are coming at it from different angles and maybe wanting it to be different things. I mean, you can always see the infighting and like the whole UAP UFO stuff. It was getting so ridiculous there in like the whistleblower stuff. I don't know. I had to like sign off of it for a while because I just can't even digest it anymore. um, yeah, if it's a habitat of simulation, who built it and why worship? Um, yeah, I think it goes into um, there's other people like Rizwan who has the belief that we're in a simulation. Like Elon Musk, a lot of those tech people, I think it's more digestible for them to not go down the God route and just say, "Oh, it's a simulation." So if that's true, then there's something that created the simulation. I mean, that to me, you get into like it could be an alien race for all we know that made a simulation. You give enough time and technology, then we're going to create a simulation. This is right. This is the argument that Elon puts forth. So then, therefore, there's already a simulation in existence, or it's already happened. Like this isn't new. Um, so sorry, just reading the chat, guys. Yeah, I don't know. It's pretty dark. But if it is a simulation, then obviously some godlike figure, anything to us that made us or had any hand in making us, or even if it's not what we think of the traditional God, it's like that's a god to us. It's God. Right? It could be an alien. It could be anything. We're going to view that as a god, right? Uh, yeah, and I already just discussed. This is completely against what the Bible teaches. I understand that, and like what on the show we're going to cover stuff that does go against that because it's interesting, right? And there's people who are presenting theories that that might not go with what you believe personally, but doesn't mean like go with what I believe personally. But we're still going to explore it and try to figure out if it means anything or if there's any evidence for it or what people are looking into. And I think that's obviously if you want this stuff to be looked at through a scientific lens, at least as much as possible, with everything that's going on, then you need to be open to things not jiving with your worldview. And if you don't want to hear that, I mean, I don't know. I can still entertain this stuff and then go and still be a practicing Catholic or whatever you are, whatever you want to be. If you don't want to believe in anything, if you're an atheist and you're just curious, like, hey, I wonder what these people are saying, like, fine, like I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Like, I think you should be curious, even if a lot of people look at the paranormal as just something fun and entertaining to do, and they want to go see scary movies and everything else, and they want to like just dip their toe in the pool, and they don't want to like go too deep. I feel like Nathaniel goes like super deep. That's why it was so fascinating, and it's cool and interesting that he's put so much time and effort into this and trying to develop a theory. And that's what a lot of these guys, they just try to wrap it all together so it can all be explained, not one thing. Not, oh, there's UAP, there's things coming from some planet we don't know exists outside the asteroid belt, and that's what's explaining all this stuff, right? I mean, and then there's the other faction that goes like interdimensional beings, and that's what it is. Like, he's looking at the whole picture. Like, why are we getting so many varied reports across so many different aspects of the phenomenon, and what does it mean, and is it tied together? And I think that's what makes it so compelling. Um, I don't think it's against what the Bible says at all. It lines up with it pretty well in my experience. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of symbolism there. Like, even me just trying to explain some of it, like, I feel like I'm explaining angels and demons. You know what I mean? Like, there's good and bad, and there's a whole rich history to the Old Testament that, I mean, I think one of the episodes I want to cover going forward is getting somebody on who can talk about some of the more ancient stories and the things that people don't necessarily reference a lot today. And I think tying that in to what it could mean, because, right, like, how many this might upset some people, but the Bible is the word of God, but like, how many, it's like telephone, and I know that's used to try to discount the Bible, and that's not what I'm doing. I'm saying, like, how many versions, how many translations, how many interpretations, like, even if it's translated correctly or it's passed down, like, who's preaching the information to you? If you sit down and read it, that is dense. Like, the Old Testament, that is dense. Like, good luck. I think it's good to try to read it and to see what kind of like speaks to you. And I know there's a whole thing around that. Um, but to understand the historical context, who they were talking to at the time, like, it is so complex. And I think to kind of unpack that, and in relation to, um, when people say, "Oh, that's not in the Bible," or "That's outside the Bible," it's like, well, who's telling you that? You know what I mean? Um, I think I got to get out of here, guys. This was fun. We'll do more of these, and we'll try to clean up the setup. And obviously, we'll bring guests in and co-hosts. People just had conflicting schedules today. That's why it was just me. And thank you guys for joining. Make sure you listen Apple Podcasts, Spotify, TikTok. If you're not on TikTok, watch on TikTok. If you're not on YouTube, get on YouTube, because we have a lot of good stuff on there. And then Veil Encounters. But guys, if you have a story, it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be crazy. You don't have to have proof. Like, for example, my friend who had this stuff happen, the paranormal event. Like, we have photos of the things that he's talking about. Like, he said he was scratched, and we have the photos of the scratches. Like, so if you have those things, like, you don't want your identity like just kind of put out there, totally fine. We'll keep it anonymous. Um, but you can do that if you're a first responder, if you know someone who has a weird, strange story, come on, talk about it. And I think just discussing the issue and not necessarily thinking like you have to have the answer or the conclusion is fine. Like, you don't need to sit there and go, "Oh, I have all the answers, so I know what this is," or "I don't want to look foolish." Like, we'll disguise your voice if you really wanted to. All right. Or we'll just read it, read your account. Like, I think that's all interesting stuff, because I think a lot of people dump on anecdotal reports, but I mean, that's really how everything starts. Um, and even I was talking to the gentleman who did the ancient religious NDE research, is that people just automatically think if you go back in time, people are stupid, and so their experiences aren't worthy. You know what I mean? Like, it's strange to me what we do in contemporary times to discount things that fit outside the box or that don't fit inside the box. Um, Last comment, it seems to be the same thing throughout the ages. The only thing that's changed is our perception of it. It remains on the outside of our understanding, no matter the age. Yeah, it feels that way. Like, there's an equivalent thread that people say God of the gaps. Like, oh, if we don't understand it, oh, it's God. Oh, it's God. But there's a similar thing on the science side. Um, I think it's promissory. I forget the term used, but basically that, oh, science will figure it out. Science will figure it out, right? And so you go through this the history, and these things keep appearing. And instead of saying, oh, it's just crazy people, it used to be like, oh, you're ignorant and you think thunder and lightning is a god, and now you have mental illness or something else, right? You keep denigrating the person telling you what's happening. And I'm not saying all of them are true, right? 99% probably aren't true or have another prosaic cause, but like to discount it, discount it, discount it no matter what, instead of looking at the historical evidence and going like this, what is this common thread throughout time? That I think opens a door to like a fascinating discussion that is actually a little bit more honest than just shutting it and going, oh, nothing to see here. There's something that's attached itself to my family and my mom's side. She had stories, has stories. Yeah, that's one of our friends right now. It's like something's been following, and the other gentleman we have actually was stationed in Germany. And there's a lot of talk. I think somebody was on. Was it Rogan? I think he was like a Navy SEAL, and he had the experience after staying in like this haunted barracks at Germany. It was like a concentration camp or something during the Nazi era. And it's the same thing. He stayed over in Germany, had something start happening there. And then when he came home, he had something start happening. And we didn't even get talking about Nathaniel and how it would target bloodlines. Like it seems to go after the same family and then their children. And that's been echoed by the Exorcist about, you know, um, putting curses on people, or grandparents will offer up their grandkids as part of like this occult ritual or sacrifice, and that kind of goes in with what Nathaniel was saying about how they do that to gain favor with this proto-intelligence. It just gets crazy. We can just keep talking about it, but I got to run, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. Remember, check out the podcast, and hit us up, podcast at dadsdoomsdayguide.com, podcast at dadsdoomsdayguide.com. And let us know what your thoughts are, what episodes you like to see, and I appreciate it. And we'll see you guys next time. All right, I'm gonna sign off.